welcome to another interesting literature and English class. I am Precious Balogun. Our theme for today is Introduction to Prose, and our topic is plot. By the end of the lesson, you should be able to define plot and link the sequence of events in a novel. Most times, when we pick up a book we want to read or a movie we want to watch, we sometimes wonder what this book or the movie is all about. Then we ask ourselves some questions. Questions like, who are the characters? What will happen in the story? And so on. All these point to one thing, which is the plot of a story. Now, what is the plot of a story? The plot of a story is a sequential arrangement of actions and events in a story by the playwright. The playwright puts together a series of events or actions to create a story. And this series of events is what drives the audience or readers through the story. Now, the plot consists of the beginning, middle, and end. Let's go on to look at the elements of plot. Here we have 5 elements that make up the plot. We have the exposition, the rising action, the climax, falling action, and finally the resolution. All these are depicted in this picture. Now, let's look at these elements one after the other. We'll start with the exposition. Exposition is the beginning of a story where the author gives necessary information or background information needed for you to understand a story properly. Now, he gives necessary information about the setting and the characters in a story. For example, in the story about tortoise and the birds, the story begins with the setting and the characters. And sometimes it also reveals the conflict of the story. Remember, I said exposition is made up of settings, characters, and sometimes conflicts. Now, let's take a look at each of them one after another. Let's start with settings. Settings is the time or period and place a story takes place. So it is the time and place that surrounds a story. Now, from this image, we can see the environment that a story takes place. For instance, the story of the tortoise and the birds. This is the sky and this is the land. Now, let's take a look at characters. A character is any person, animal, inanimate thing, or creature represented in a story. Characters are used by authors to perform and reveal the actions of a story. From our example, the tortoise and the birds, we can see the image of Mr. Eagle, Mr. Tortoise, the parrot, and tortoise wife. These are the characters in the story. And also, let's look at conflict. Conflict is a struggle the main character must meet and deal with in order for he or she to make or get to his desired goal in a story. Now, the types of conflicts we have are internal conflicts. This is a conflict inside, which is man versus self. Then we have external conflicts. This is a conflict that shows that is a character against a character. That is man versus man versus nature. That is a character versus nature, maybe versus wind, versus the climate and all. And finally, man versus society. Having looked at all these, let's go back to the elements of plot. First of all, we spoke about exposition. Now, let's go to the rising action. The rising action starts the actions in a story. These are the events or actions that build up the conflict in a story to its climax. Now, let's take a look at this image. This is the image of Mr. Tortoise. The rising action in The Tortoise and the Birds is when the tortoise asked for feathers and he was given feathers. An example of rising action in the story of Tortoise and the Birds is seen when Tortoise goes to beg the birds for feathers so that he can join them for their feast in the sky. And Tortoise was given feathers to join them. That is what we have here in this picture. Another element that we'll be looking at is climax. Climax is a crucial point in a story. This is where all the events and actions come to its peak. Now let's take a look at an example. An example can be seen from this image. Tortoise takes a name and his name is All of You. And he decides to eat all the food because the host says the food is for all of you. The birds are angry at Tortoise's decision and are faced with decisions that will gradually bring the story to an end. This is the peak of the story. Now let's go on to the next one, the falling action. The falling action is the next element after climax. This is when the story gradually comes to an end. The events and the actions lead to the resolution of conflict. Now, from our example, the falling action is when the birds decide to throw Mr. Tortoise from sky to earth. That is what we have in our picture here. Finally, we have resolution. This is when the story comes to an end. The author satisfies the curiosity of the audience or readers. The story can either end happily or on a sad note. For the story of the tortoise and the birds, it ended in a sad note because Tortoise finally lost his back, or rather his back was broken. That's all for now, but before we go, let's take a quick summary of all we've learned so far. We've learned that plot is the sequential arrangement of events in a story by the author. We've also learned that some of the elements of plots are exposition, rising action, climax, falling action, and resolution. Let's test ourselves to know how much we've learned so far. Question 1. What is the sequential arrangement of events in a story? A. Setting. B. Climax. C. Plot. D. Resolution. The correct answer is C. Plot. Question 2. What is conflict? A. Two people who are upset with each other. B. The struggles the main character must meet and deal with. C. When one character does not like another character. D. One character wrongs another character. The correct answer is B. The struggles the main character must meet and deal with. I believe with all this, you can define plot and you can list and explain the plot elements in a story. That will be all for now. Bye!